Wine, yeah, wine, sure. Say wine's not good for you, you know. Uh, Neither is butter, but it tastes good with food. And we use butter. Uh, like wine tastes great with food, and not only that, is it just makes you share a bottle with someone. It's not like, you sit down, you're both sharing a bottle, you're sharing an experience together, and you have a conversation, and it lubricates the conversation. It's not about getting drunk. It's not about partying. It's just communicating with each other and talking and we seem to have lost that. I mean, if there's anything that I want our why to be, it's gonna be something that revolves around, reminding people about what really matters in life. Going out to beautiful places, enjoying a bottle of wine with family, with friends, with new people, having conversations, getting your phone out, your head out of your phone and just looking up and, uh, remembering why you do it. The one marketing thing that I really want to get after, you know, an idea that I think that is they chant 996 in San Francisco these days. All these AI guys that work in 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. I want Benovia to be day 7. I want day 7 to be at Benovia for all those guys. You come here, you know, and remember why you're working so hard. You're working so hard so that, in the future, this is what really is going to matter. You come here and you enjoy this place, these people, these wines, and you talk about things that matter. That's
Welcome, everybody, back to the Barrels and Roots podcast. I'm your host, Sean Trace, and I have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Hi, my name's Josh Trowbridge. I'm the general manager for Benovia Winery. We're a winery in the Russian River Valley. We have 3 estate vineyards. One, Martaella, where our wineries are located. Another out in the Freestone area called Tilton Hill, and then the historic Cone Vineyard right off of West Side Road in Healdsburg. So we have a really nice, survey of what the Russian River has to offer from all its different diverse standpoints. So I've been here since January 6th, so just getting my feet wet, but it is a dream job and it is a exciting opportunity.
That's awesome. Well, great day to start out your work. That's my birthday, man. So January 6th is a good day.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you this. Well, what was the first wine moment when you realized that this was more than just a beverage? It was something that you wanted to do, in a bigger way for yourself and for your career.
That's a good question. Well, I got interested in wine in college, and it started out as a dinner party with a friend, and one of the guests was French. We were all at UC Berkeley together, and his dad had given them what was called a really expensive Bordeaux. And to be honest, I don't remember what it was, but it was just fascinating to me that you could have a great dinner and you have this wine that was special that would elevate the whole evening. And that kind of got me started with it. And then of course, the idea of picking the right wine for my apartment, that I ever got lucky enough to bring a towhead home with me, that I would have the right wine for the right moment, got me a little bit more interested. And I generally failed at that and realized maybe I need to take a class about wine to learn more. And then it wasn't until I would say my junior year, I was in a African American film studies midterm, and I was getting bored with my essay that I was writing in a blue book, and I turned it over and I drew a picture of a winery on top of a hill with a vineyard coming down of it. And I was thinking to myself, that would be a career. I could grow something, make something, sell something, run a business. Maybe this is what I want to do with my life. And really, from then on out, it was all about going up to wine country and talking to people, about wine. I went up and I talked to Tom Mackey at St. Francis and Dan Duckhorn at Duckhorn and Tom Eddy over in Napa. And these guys became mentors to me who put me in touch with more and more people about the wine business to give me a direction of where I wanted to go in the business. And since that time, my whole career has been in wine.
That's wildly amazing, and, like, it sounds like there's been an interesting journey, but I wanted to ask you this, like, what twists and turns led you to, to this moment, you know? You said you got started there, but, like, how did you get to where you're at, you know, working with the wines that you're working with now?
Yeah. But it's kind of like a full circle moment in a way. Um, my first job in the wine business, God, it can't be more than a few miles from here. I got a job in
Mm,
the summer of 1998 working in a cellar at St. Francis. And I was still playing football at Cal at the time. So I would drive up at 6 in the morning, uh, work at they had a winery. It was right by the airport here. Where St. Francis had the majority of the barrels at the time. This was before they built the new winery. The new winery was only a plan at that point, and I got the job because Lloyd Canton was one of the original owners, and I went came up and met with Lloyd and Joe, and then they put me in touch with Tom Mackey, and I got the job up there, and then I'd have to be back in Berkeley by 3:30 for football practice. So it was actually the hardest summer I ever spent. Where I was up at 6 in the morning driving to Santa Rosa, driving back by after lunch to get to football practice at 3:30, and then lifting weights and doing all the conditioning until like 6:30. um and then I played my last season of football. I worked for Gallo as a merchandiser in the East Bay. So started from the bottom on the cellar rat side, and then started from the bottom at the salesman side.
mm.
And then I graduated and I went and I borrowed my parents' motorhome. I parked it in Johnson's Beach Campground in Guerneville, and I worked to harvest at Williams-Sonoma that summer. So that's where I started, and and between then and now, it's gone through, a whole other set of experiences that took me, first down to Southern California to work for Gallo as a salesperson, calling on the grocery stores. I did well at that. And then they let me work directly for the winery, calling on Wine Warehouse in their on premise division, selling the fine wines for Gallo. So I got that really great experience, and my wife and I got married, and we were on our honeymoon in Maui, and my wife kept bothering me, "Let's just move to Hawaii. Let's move to Hawaii." And I was kind of like, all right, well, I'll let my boss know. And I
Mhm.
told him, my wife, I said, "Hey, move to Hawaii or Northern California for my next job." And a month later, I'm in his office and he wants me to go to Hawaii to be the sales manager for the on premise sales team at Johnson Brothers in Hawaii. I told my wife, and she went, "Are you crazy?" But that's neither here nor there. We ended up going to Hawaii, and you in Hawaii, you're kind of a big fish in a small pond. So I was doing a job when I was in my mid 20s that, most guys doing the same job in California in their 50s, and have already worked for 20 years. So trying to
Wow.
figure out how to manage sales across the whole state. We had warehouses on the Big Island and Maui and Kauai and on Oahu, and I called our Lanai, and we serviced Molokai and the whole deal. So I was able to, get a lot of really great experience early on the wholesale side. And I worked my way up to be the vice president of that company and manage all sales on both on and off premise. And I made a jump over to Young's Market Company in Hawaii, where I eventually ran the estates group. So the fine wine division for Young's Market Company before they were bought out by Republic for the state of Hawaii. And then, there's the draw to get back to wine country was there, and to be close to family. I'd had 2 kids at that point, I'd already been a vice president. So the idea of having a fancy title wasn't a big deal. So I went back and I took a job as a national sales manager in Santa Cruz for a little winery that was up in the mountains there. That was like a dream job, to run a small winery like that as a national sales manager. But unfortunately, the owner got tired of losing money. And I got there, they were hardly selling anything and they had a ton of inventory and ultimately they wanted me to liquidate it. So I liquidated that inventory, and then got a job with the wine group, out of Livermore, covering Northern California and Hawaii, which, the wine group is fantastic people. Still really good friends with a lot of people over there, but wasn't the wine culture by any means that I was looking for. I've always been a fine wine guy, just a wine nerd for all intents and purposes, maybe even a wine snob. Um, but the opportunity that came up was interesting. I got a call from a headhunter to be a vice president of sales for a cooperage based out of Benicia, California, called Rio. Yeah, I thought, that's interesting. Okay, I get to go call on winemakers and sell them barrels. That sounds exciting, and it was. I had an opportunity to come into a young cooperage making French and American oak wine barrels and oak alternatives, and it was a really good company. And um, it was one of these situations where they'd started the business and it wasn't making money, and the job was to make money and build a brand, and we did that. I worked my way up to being the CEO of Rio. And, at our peak, we had about 46 people working directly for Rio, plus, 18 people, worked with us that were part of the parent company. Um, we were making over 10,000 barrels a year. We had 400 plus customers. We got up to as high as, 19 million in sales, and we were turning around some really good profitability. Um, the COVID was a fascinating time. 2020 was the worst year ever. 2021, 22 were the best years ever. And then 23, 24 were the worst years ever. And, you know, uh, they had to make some changes there, and they consolidated some of their companies, and I was left without an opportunity. Which, in hindsight was one of the hardest things that's ever happened to me. And in foresight, it's gave me the opportunity to finally get to do the job I always wanted to do. And that was to be a general manager of a winery in California that made Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So I just, the worst luck in the world turned into the greatest opportunity. And I couldn't be more thankful to be here. And we have a great owners, Joe Anderson and Mary Dwayne, and we got a great team here at Benovia. And like everyone, we're going through the hard part of the business where visitation's down and consumption's down. So we need to find our way through that. And it's an opportunity to really make people aware of just how amazing this place and these people and the wines are and how unique they are. And that's the exciting challenge that I'm embarking on now, and I couldn't be happier to be doing it.
That's awesome. It's awesome because you've had so many different, parts of the journey and seen parts of wine. I mean, from working, in sales to a cooperage, like, that's really cool. But I wanted to ask you this, like, in your current role, what is something about wine that most people don't understand, that's really important to you?
Yeah. Well, when you say most people is a big term. Most people don't know hardly anything about wine.
True,
We
right?
really we're marketing to a very, very, very small segment of the population that, one appreciates wine and two is willing to pay, 50 to $100 for a bottle. So um, that's interesting. I guess, the way I look at it, and this is a little bit unique take, and it might be a lens towards my weird fascination with AI. But I envision a world. A lot of people talk about a world when no one works, and I envision a world where you take a drop of Romane Conte and you put it into a machine and it decomposes the atoms and can make a million cases of something that tastes exactly like 2024 Romane Conte in the future.
Mm,
And the question then becomes, does Romane Conte just go away because they have no value? Because you can just make something that tastes exactly like Romane Conte. And in my belief and my hope, my passionate hope is that's not the case.
yeah,
Will Romane Conte be $25,000 in a bottle in that world? No. Will it be worth something more than most things that it's special? Yes. And the reason is because the people in the place. I mean, not,
yeah.
those things really matter, and it's what I want to focus on at Benovia. It's not about whether or not we get 97 points. I mean, sure we do. I just don't care about that. I
Yeah.
care about bringing people here to taste the wine, to be in the place, to understand the passion and the care in the soil and the natural environment that it comes from. That's what I love about wine, and that's what I wanna show people. That's what I think really matters.
I've talked about this many times on the podcast. Like I love film photography. I, worked in media and content for a long time, but I started out I remember the first camera my dad gave me. He gave me this camera kit. It was a Pentax K1000, old school camera. And I would have to go out, and when I took, some photography classes in college, the the challenge was is I'd get that camera, I'd get a roll of film, I'd go out and shoot it myself, and then I'd go up to the development room, and I'd go in there, and I would do the whole development process myself, and then I'd get an image out. And it's interesting because now we have all of these apps that can reproduce all of these looks and all these styles. But is there still a thing to be said for the work? I think there is. I think that there is this place that people understand things that are hard, things that take time, things that are um, special, and I think that in the future as well, there will be that, and I think it comes with the stories. I think it comes with the place. Think it comes with the art of doing things the hard way. I know, and I see it in. My wife is a musician. My wife is a famous musician in Vietnam. And one of the things that's cool is there's all these new tools that people can use. But when you go to the best recording studios, they still have a lot of analog gear. They still have a lot of things that, they're sitting there cranking these dials to get these sounds. And these young kids are like, well, there's a plug-in for that. And the guy that's sitting there in that studio says, I know there is, but you know what? This is it. This is the real stuff. That sound is coming because that vocal signal is running through this vacuum tube, and then it's popping out the other side, and this right here, this is giving that warmth. Well, we can create that warmth. Yeah, you can, but it's not the authentic one. Like, not just that, but the work that went into creating this analog device, man, someone sat there and had to figure out how to solder that thing together to create that vibe. And I think there's such an art for that. And one of the things that's really cool is that I see with a lot of Gen Z, there is this love for that type of thing. That there's like this obsession with Gen Z for these older cameras. All of my workers drool over all of my film cameras. Like, they'll come in and they're like, "Mr. Shank, can you just take it out for a second? As I got everything locked away it's in a place that, it's like a dehumidifier because I live in a very humid climate. And then when I pull it out of the dehumidifier, they just sit there and look at it with awe. And I was like, don't just look at it with awe. You want to take it out? Take it for a spin. Go take some pictures. Go and have some fun with it. And then they come back, they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, why not, man? It's better to take pictures with it than it just sits in a dehumidifier all day. And when they come back, they have something, and it's funny. We were at a work party, and I bought, you remember the old disposable like film camera things? I bought a
Yeah,
couple of those, and I
yeah.
handed them out to my team, and it was wild because they were taking pictures and then they were doing this. And I was like, you can't see it. You can't
You
see
don't
it.
get to
There's
see
no
it until you develop it.
You don't get to see it until you develop it, and then they're trying to take the picture again, and I was like, "You've gotta roll the film," and they were like, "Oh my god," but you know what was wild is that there was this respect when the photos came back. First of all, there were no apps, and, like, a couple of people were like, "I look horrible," and I was like, "No, you look beautiful," because it was a snapshot of a moment. Like, that's truth right there. That was the actual moment we were in. There's no filter cleaning it up. There's no special AI removing all of the imperfections. Every imperfection is there in its beauty, and you can reproduce that with an app, but how much better is it to, like, have the real thing? And it's just
Yeah.
kind of one of my soapboxes that I stand on, but I think with
We
wine, it's the
share a
same thing.
similar, soapbox, I think, then. Yeah. It's funny that they share that in common. It's like vinyl records or, you know,
I've got my
grinding your
whole
own
stash right over there, man. Right here's
yeah.
my
You know,
I've got
you
my
can have your
record player,
digital music, but there's nothing like, it is, you for some people, this is my thing. Like, I don't want to lie here. I don't listen, I don't have a vinyl record collection, but I think about people that they do. And I think it's similar to like what I really appreciate about authentic wine, you know, and that's, for our wines in the Russian River, like we don't add anything. There's grapes, and there's French oak barrels. There's no alternatives. There's no tannins. There's no nothing, I mean, it's taking something that you grow in the earth and not fucking it up in the winery and put it in a bottle. And that's all we want to do. And it's harder to do than it sounds. I mean, it's a lot of work to do that, to not screw it up. And I don't want to take away from the winemaker Adolfo's, skill and all that stuff. But I mean, ultimately, they just want to express the soil, and that's a way of us expressing ourselves and what matters to us. And I think in a solved world where many of the things that used to be scarce aren't scarce anymore, which
Yeah,
I hope for. I like that. There still will be things that have intrinsic value,
yeah,
that matter to all of us. And I like to say, I'm so lucky to be in this job, because in a solved world, when I don't have to work, I'm probably going to go surfing on Monday, but on Tuesday, I might come to Benovia and be general manager because that's just what I want to do. I want to be part of this, you know. If I didn't have to go sell the wine, I'd probably spend more time now, with the vineyard manager, suckering or pruning or, doing all that stuff. Certainly I want to spend a lot of time doing that. But the business requires you to go out and sell it these days. So that's part of the deal too, which I enjoy as well. I enjoy seeing people and meeting people and telling a story, no matter where that requires me to go.
I love that the recognition of telling a story. I, I do, I do video work for all types of companies. Like my team, we've been doing stuff for huge corporations too. I've got to work. My wife, being a famous singer, has allowed me to work with some amazing people. But there's something that like the best teams really understand. It's the power of story, and there are certain things but like I was having this one brief and recently, and they were like, "We're gonna start with a drone shot." And I was like, "No, you're not. You're gonna start with people. Like, let's start off with people." You remember the TV show Dirty Jobs? Man, I loved that because it showed these real people getting their hands dirty, showing them, one of the companies that I think it's not wine, but what was it? Black Rifle Copy Company has some of the best marketing in the world because it's like always stories about the people. They start off with a guy, he's like getting a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. And what's interesting to me is because they focus on that craft. They focus on something that's memorable. And it leaves me to this question, like in a world of scores and critics, which, let's be real, in wine, that's never going to go away. But how do you stay focused on craft instead of just constantly chasing validation? Because, I mean, it's hard to do, hard to stay focused,
I think it's hard to answer that question now because I'm there long enough to say that.
Yeah.
That being said, we're fortunate enough that we're small. We're so small that we don't necessarily, if I was Silver Oak or someone, someone Jordan or whatever, or that size or bigger, like, I think that stuff matters a lot. Like, I think we're small enough that, like, we can overcome the vagaries and necessities of the market, because our market share is so small, you know. If visitorship's down 50% in Sonoma County, well, as long as we still get a bunch of people from the 50% that still come, we're still going to be super busy. We'll be as busy as we're allowed to be here. So I think if we focus on the right people who value what we value, or maybe they don't even know that they value that, to find the people where, like you were talking about, these Gen Zers that aren't drinking wine, and find them and show them that wine has this level of authenticity that they crave. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll trip them into wine drinkers. Maybe that's where you ought to focus rather than trying to get 97 point wine that some baby boomer that's, hanging on is going to go buy 3 cases of my 97 point Pinot, because he got a score and that's the way he or she always bought their wine. I'm as guilty as anyone, you know, my last job, I take old world wines to winemakers, and I was doing a lunch with the winemaker because they don't get to taste old world wines enough. And I'd go to benchmark wine.com, and I don't have every producer in Burgundy memorized. So I go on their filter and you just pick, whatever you know, 50 to $100 with a 95 plus point score. And it gives you a list of wines you can pick from and choose. So I'm guilty of that, you know. Um, so I recognize that you say that's part of the business. We're just not going to chase that. We're going to submit our wines to all these critics, sure. Um, but we're not going to let our value be dictated by that. If I have anything to do with it.
Do you remember The Big Lebowski?
Yeah,
Great movie. Movie came out and it was panned by everyone.
yeah,
Like, the movie came out and everyone's like, "This is horrible." Yeah. But you know what? It told a story that was hilarious. The movie became a cult classic because it was authentic. In a weird time where movies weren't that, it just made, like, a story that was hilarious, had great
yeah,
people in it, and it was, like, something that stuck. And one of the things too that I'm always fascinated by is, like, um, I was lucky enough that was when I was in high school, my parents took jobs in this little place called the Napa Valley, and I had no idea what that was all about, and so we moved up there, and I'm living in St. Helena, 16 years old, living in St. Helena, and surrounded by this new culture that was absolutely fascinating to me. But what was wild is I got to grow up there, went to college in the area, and then live there for, a good period of time after, and got to work in and around these people, was that it was the most authentic group of people that you could find. Like, these people were just salt of the earth people showing up every day out in these vineyards and literally just, you know, shepherding these vines from the beginning of the season to the end. And then at the same time, doing the same thing with the wine as they were making it. And they were really amazingly authentic in like their everyday interactions. And there was very few people that came in with pretense to any of the places that I was working. And it was awesome for that because I think that, I my wife is a huge cocktail drinker. She loves cocktails, but every time I open a glass, I sit there and go, you know, um, I think about the who right now. Um, the other last year or two, a couple years ago, there was that boat that got stuck in the Suez Canal, which I would love to interview the guy that was the guy driving the boat that day. How did you pull that off? Like, how did you sit there and go, "Hey, hey, hold my beer." You know, like, "What? Dude, how'd you pull that off, man?"
I just did some research on that the other day, by the way. Do you know how many containers a container ship going through the Suez Canal can hold?
No, tell me.
Something like 26,000 containers on one
That's
ship.
that's nuts, man.
That's
That's
nuts, right?
absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And then, like, everything that you could think of went up in price, and, like, paper clips were suddenly now this insane price because, like, the supply chain was there, and, like, what I try to tell people is the number of hands that have touched when I have a glass of wine, it's almost this spiritual moment for me because I think of, every last thing. I live in Southeast Asia right now. I split my time between here and California. Like, I'm going back to the Napa Valley, but when I come back to Southeast Asia, I'm allowed 2 bottles. 2 bottles is it. That's all that you can carry across a border, you know? And then per person. So, definitely gonna be giving my wife some bottles too in the next flight we have, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, there's so much of the stuff that I love I can't get here. And, there's that rareness of something that makes it so precious. And I think that, like, for me, I try to remember that. I try to remember the story of every single one of those people that has been into it. And, like, that's why I love interviewing all these people that have a place in this journey. Like when you're telling your story, man, I wanna ask you, I know it's not the time and place, but what was it like playing at Cal? What was it like playing football and then driving up those nights? I mean, I remember when I was in college, driving from the Bay Area up to Santa Rosa, it was a thing, and I had my old Subaru GL wagon that didn't have AC. I had to roll those windows down. I had like the cassette for I had like 2 or 3 cassettes only, and the radio was never consistent. And I was like, my
Really?
uncle gave me the Top Gun cassette that I would be blasting regularly. Danger Zone was my go-to thing when I'm going on those long drives. It was wild, I wore that cassette out. It warbled like crazy at the end because I played it so damn much. But I mean, those stories are powerful, and we have to find ways to share those stories because people are craving stories in this day and age, you know?
Okay. No, I agree. People they're not talking to each other as much as they used to, and
Right?
they're certainly not listening to each other, talking past each other. You know,
Yeah.
um, they're talking online. Going back and forth, and it's frustrating. Wine.
100%.
Yeah, wine. Sure, say wine's not good for you. You know, uh, neither is butter, but it tastes good with food. And we use butter. Uh, like wine tastes great with food. And not only that, is it just makes you share a bottle with someone. It's not like, you sit down, you're both sharing a bottle, you're sharing an experience together, and you have a conversation, and it lubricates the conversation. It's not about getting drunk, it's not about partying,
Yep.
and it's just communicating with each other and talking and we seem to have lost that. I mean, if there's anything that I want our why to be, it's gonna be something that revolves around, reminding people about what really matters in life. Going out to beautiful places, enjoying a bottle of wine with family, with friends, with new people, having conversations, getting your phone out, your head out of your phone and just looking up and, uh, remembering why you do it. The one marketing
Yeah.
thing that I really want to get after, an idea that I think about is they chant 996 in San Francisco these days. All these AI guys that work in 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. I want Benovia to be day 7. I want day 7 to be at Benovia for all those guys. You come here, you know, and remember why you're working so hard. You're working so hard so
Yeah.
that, in the future, this is what really is going to matter. You come here and you enjoy this place, these people, these wines, and you talk about things that matter, you know? That's, you know.
I'm a small business owner. I hustle day in and day out, and it is a 9 to 9 type thing. Dude, I finished a sales call at 1 a.m. It is now 5:30 a.m. I woke up at 5 a.m. my time to get on this call. But one
Crazy.
of the things, dude, it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do, And I have my why, of my wife and my daughter, and I have the reasons I do what I do. But my wife and I, it's almost a spiritual thing. Every week we'll go out for a drink. We'll go to this one place that we both love and we'll have a drink and we'll sit and we will look at each other and we just know that that moment we are in, our phones are down. She'll have her cocktail. I'll have my glass of whatever it is that I'm picking that night. Normally I drink red, but of late I've been really enjoying my whites. Um, and we enjoy that. Last night, it's like we were all slammed busy. My wife had stuff to do. I had stuff to do. And so finally we're like, let's all go downstairs, sing some karaoke, and then we're gonna go up the street to this spa that we can get really inexpensive massage. And we all got these really great, 90-minute massage. And then we went home and we were just like, wow. And that's what it's all about. Like, being able to be there with each other. And I think that's my best memories with wine. I had this one time in college. I can tell you my favorite bottle. And it was in college. I was working in the summer at Meadowood. I was at the Pool Terrace Cafe, and I'm gonna tell you a secret. I suck as a waiter. I am not great. I'm not really formal, but like my people that I waited tables always had a hell of a time. I got the gift of gab. We're having a fun time. It's shooting the shit, and like, but finally this guy came out and he was I don't know what he was there doing. He opened a bottle of Screaming Eagle, had a glass of it, and said, "Why don't you guys have the rest?" And me and my buddies were like, "Don't mind if I do." We took that
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
But, right near Meadowood, if you go out straight out back down this one winding road, you'll hit this beautiful spot in Lake Hodges. And it's just no one knows about it. Only a few locals know about it. You go out there and there's these beautiful oak trees and you can just sit there. There's all these Canadian geese. It's a like natural preserve area overseeing this like stunning lake. And we sat out there after our shift. The sun was setting, and we just enjoyed this bottle that, as college students, there's no way in hell we could have afforded that. And we just sat there, me and my buddies, and we just listened to life and nature, and we talked. I wish that I could take half of the jackasses in this world, sit them down, take them out to that spot on Lake Hodges, pour them some glasses of whatever wine we've got, and say, put your phones away, put your whatever away, and just have a glass, man, and sit there and find the commonality between all of us. That's what wine is to me. It's a something that can do that. And there's not many things that can these days. Music can, but even that, we're divided constantly, and we shouldn't be.
Yeah, I try and spend a lot of time telling my kids. I said, I think, um, one of the keys is, 1, be kind, uh, and number 2, be curious. So instead of trying to, like, tell people what you think, get super curious about what they think, and be open to it and just listen to it, and rather than trying to in the back of your head while they're talking, you're coming up with how you're gonna respond to them, hear 'em. That's super important, you know? And the other thing is, this isn't kind of the place where I'm gonna say it, the 4 words I think you ought to leave out of your conversations from now on. Have conversations, but don't say Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative. So you're just not allowed to use those 4 words. And it
Right.
forces you to talk about the ideas and not about, uh, what team you're on,
Yeah.
you know?
I love
Eh,
that.
super helpful.
I wanna ask you this. Someone, comes to you, and maybe they don't know a lot about wine, and you're pouring them 3 glasses. What 3 glasses of wine are you pouring?
You mean at Benovia or just where, just whatever?
Anything.
And this is a knowledgeable person or someone that's just learning about wine?
That's a good question. Let's say someone that's just coming into the world of wine.
Ooh, God, I only get three, huh?
Only get
That's
3.
really hard. Look, I think I find New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc really good to learn from. You learn something about Sauvignon Blanc, and you learn about the typicity of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. I mean, crazy, easy wine to nail on a blind tasting once you've had it a few times. So I think it's an instructive wine to taste. Um, then the contrast to that would be, a California style Chardonnay, like a buttery Chardonnay, just so they can see the contrast between the crispness and the purity of fruit of a Sauvignon Blanc versus something that's influenced by more of a bouquet and more of the barrel, more of the malolactic fermentation. And number three would be I would say a Russian River Valley or whatever. It doesn't have to be Russian. I mean, I'm a marketing guy right now. A Pinot Noir. Pick your Pinot Noir. I don't care where. Um, the reason being is most people are, introduced to bigger red wines that they have to chew back, and a Pinot Noir is the wine of compromise. So it can, pair up to a filet mignon and pair down to a salmon or whatnot. So it's the wonderful wine to introduce people to, so that when they're ordering wine at a restaurant for a group of people, it's a safe bet to match, at least to a certain degree, everyone's meals that they choose.
I love that. Alright, and then one last question. If it's just you, no audience, no expectations, 1 glass for yourself tonight, what are you choosing?
I'm just drinking wine. I'm not drinking. I'm not having it with food.
You can have it with food. Let's see, that's the hard part. You got the
What
good
am I
questions.
eating? You gotta tell me what I'm eating. I see. I'm not
Ah,
hitting you with the same questions you're
jeez.
hitting me. What do I have?
What do you have? What time of year is it? Early in the year? Um, let's say oh, man, do I wanna go wild or do I keep it restrained? Let's say that you're having some light pasta.
Light pasta, so like a white, lighter style, not a red sauce.
Maybe a red
Uh,
sauce. Actually, let's do a red sauce pasta.
yeah, I would go with most likely Italian, and I would do probably a mountain red from Sicily.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if that's tonight. Might change tomorrow. I always want to change. I always want to choose the next one. I don't buy. I almost never buy a case of anything. For myself, I never buy a case of anything. I'd rather buy 12 separate models than any repeats. I'm always learning. That's what Dan Duckhorn told me the first day I met him. He said, I was just in the winery this morning. I tasted 100 wines with Lee and Alice. That's how you learn. You taste. And I'll never forget that, whenever I tell people getting into wine, how do I learn about wine? Just go to Trader Joe's. You can buy wines from all over the world for $4.99. And they're not transcendent, but if you get a Primitivo from Trader Joe's for $4.99, it gives you an idea what Primitivo is all about. I mean, so taste, try different things with different foods and learn it out that way.
I love that, man. That's awesome. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you're doing, as well as Benovia?
Huh, I don't know where they go to learn about me. I'm not about promoting me necessarily. I want to promote Benovia, and you can go on our website and learn, about Benovia and the different, our owners and our winemaker and things like that. My intention is to help shepherd this business and take it into the future. It's not necessarily to be the superstar or anything like that. That www.benoviawinery.com is the website, and we're just outside Santa Rosa on the Santa Rosa Plain and on our Marta Ella vineyard, and we're open every day. It's one of those deals we're open by appointment. but appointments are on demand. So, you can walk right in and say, I want an appointment and we'll sit you right down.